Okay, hello. I am wanting to show you today your assignment sheet for the Phenomenological Inquiry. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but I will explain what those words mean soon. This assignment is just like your last one, going to be worked on over the course of several weeks, in fact, for the remainder of the term. And we're going to break up the assignment into smaller um, kind of chunks that are easy to accomplish with clear timeframes. So I'd like to introduce you to the assignment sheet as a way of beginning this new unit. You'll see here I'm at our course site, and I'm going to go to our assignments tab first. I'm going to find the Phenomenological Inquiry. So you see this looks just like our last assignment sheet or writing guide. The first page contains all of the important information you need to know. This is a long guide, just like the last one, with lots of explanatory notes and a calendar, as well as the rubric. But the assignment sheet itself is really just this first sheet. So phenomenological is a word that at this time you should be somewhat familiar with. It just means uh, experience, um, the experience of something that is happening or going on, a phenomenon. Inquiry just means an investigation into a question. In fact, all academic work might be described as inquiry. In this assignment, you're going to be um, writing in an academic genre as opposed to a popular genre like the one you were writing in last time, genre meaning just type of writing. And we're going to undertake an original research question that you will develop. And we're going to use a real academic methodology to investigate that question. It's a social science methodology rooted in the philosophy of phenomenology. And and by way of undertaking that methodology, we will explore that central question, and we're going to write out of that that inquiry or original research that you undertake. Hopefully, that will make a little bit more sense as we go throughout the assignment sheet and as we continue working throughout this unit, this last unit of the course. So here in the rhetorical situation section, I remind you that this is an academic genre. This is a genre that you can find real world examples of, real academics working at universities, writing in. I give you a couple of journals that specialize in phenomenological research and where you can find adult expert examples of this genre. It'll be important to keep that academic audience in mind as we get into the writing phase of this piece. When we finish the research phase and start working on drafting our paper, you'll be addressing that paper to an academic audience. And we may, at that point, depending on, I'm making decisions about what kinds of instruction to give kind of on a week by week basis now, but we may talk about linguistic features of American academic English. It's a bit longer than your last paper. And these word links are always a suggestion, not a requirement, but this is about how long I think this assignment will take you to do well. Note also that we're changing styles. We're using APA rather than Chicago. Okay, on this next point, I'd like to pause just for a second. I know you maybe are have a lot of questions about how we will finish the term in light of recent unpredictable events. And while I am kind of planning the course week by week, and I promise I'll always give you enough notice to complete assignments on time. I'm not trying to catch you out by surprise. But while I will be kind of week by week and class by class unveiling what you need to do, clear benchmarks that way, I can say with relative, well, I'm pretty sure that these final due dates will remain the same at this point. But again, things can be unpredictable as we are finding out. So your first draft is a partial draft, and it's due Monday, April 20th at 8 p.m. And that's a draft that you will exchange for peer review. We will not be, of course, doing peer review in class, nor will we be doing it synchronously. We'll only be using the comment function to give feedback. And then your final draft will be due on the day and time we would have had an exam in this class. Please note that we will not have an exam in this class, only turning in this final paper. If you'd like to have a grading conference with me, it would have to happen before these dates, May 7th at 2 p.m. for section C, and Friday, May 8th for section D in the morning at 9. We'll talk more about scheduling those grading conferences later in the semester. Those grading conferences are optional. You still haven't at this point gone through a grading conference. We'll begin those next week, starting on the 23rd of March. So the second paper, you are encouraged, or it's optional whether you want a grading conference or not. I'm happy and ready to meet with all of you in grading conference to evaluate your final work. But if you choose to have me evaluate it alone, that's fine as well. But if you'd like to revise, use a token and revise that paper, you may do that after our grading conference up until May 13th at 5 p.m. And that has to be a hard deadline because I need to have time to reevaluate the work and get our final grades in. Okay. You can't revise if you don't have a grading conference with me. So that's only an option for those of you that have a grading conference. And in the cases where you may not pass that paper, you can, if you have a token available still, choose to revise. And we would just make a plan for that revision, and that would the new draft would have to be in to me by May 13th at 5 p.m. And again, that, as I've said before, that new grade replaces the old entirely. Here's what that looks like on our course schedule. So you see that most, at this point in the semester, most of the second half of the term is left blank. I do have a tentative plan for how we'll be using those class periods now, but again, I will be adjusting those day by day and week by week. But you do see that on the 21st, you have an exchange for the first partial draft of your Phenomenological Inquiry, and that we're going to complete comments by that following Thursday. And then you have between that time, April 23rd, and your section's due date to complete a second draft. And if you choose to have a conference with me, it would have to happen before a grading conference with me. It would have to happen before that date. Then final revisions are due on the 13th before 5 p.m. and I will be posting grades, final grades on May 19th or before. Okay, so what are you going to be writing? I'm asking you first to develop a research question. You'll be doing that for homework for March 24th, Tuesday, March 24th. I'm going to ask that that be a question about experience. What is the experience of blank might be a or what is it like to those might be good starting phrases to get you into asking a question that's rooted in experience. The methodology we're using requires that the question you're asking is about an experience. So it shouldn't be, for instance, an issue-based question like, you know, is it right? Should we move to um, uh, increase medical access to impoverished mothers in the South or something like that. That would be an opinion-based question or an issue-based question and wouldn't be about an experience. The way you might rephrase that question to make it a phenomenological question would be, what is the experience of an impoverished mother in the South trying to get access to medical care for herself or her children? You see the slight difference in those two questions? I hope so. I've also given you some examples in the homework description on the course schedule for next time. So the next thing you're going to do is collect lived experience descriptions. So in the last paper, you were writing your own or generating your own lived experience description. This time, you're going to be collecting the lived experience descriptions of others as they pertain to whatever your research question is. So if you were using that question of trying to understand what it's like to access healthcare as a young mother who's impoverished in the South, you'd be wanting to find lived experience descriptions and from those mothers themselves in two ways. One, through interviewing. So you'd want to find an impoverished mother who you could interview. And we'll talk more about interviewing in the coming weeks. That's something you're going to be really focused on this coming week and next through the end of March and into early April. And the other way is that you can find lived experience descriptions in the literature. So last paper you were doing some database research. You are going to have to do a good deal more database research, finding descriptions in essays, magazine articles, scholarly articles, blog posts, newspapers, films, poems, memoirs, and any other cultural source you can find. Sorry, that's my dog barking in the background. And you'll be then able to analyze both the lived experience descriptions that you find in the literature, short passages where firsthand experiences are being described, and through your interviews, which you will transcribe and analyze through a process I'll walk you through in detail, step by step. Don't worry too much about that at this point. Just know that you're going to be analyzing interview transcripts that you generate, working with participants who have firsthand knowledge of the experience you're investigating in your research question. The kind of analysis you'll be doing will be looking for themes or big ideas, important aspects of that experience across these different sources, your interviews, and the LEDs you find in the literature. You'll be reflecting on those themes, just like you did in your last paper. You identified themes or important aspects of your experience as you were describing it firsthand, and then you reflected on those themes. You'll be doing the same thing here. So again, the big difference is that you're not working with your own experience alone, although you may include writing from the last paper in this one. This time you are finding others' experiences and analyzing them. You'll synthesize all of this, meaning just bringing it together. Um, your analysis, your reflections on others' LEDs, as well as personal narrative that may be from your first paper, um, or new personal writing that you write. You'll bring those all together in a paper structure. And I'll give you a few examples in the coming weeks of students who have done this, as well as experts who have done this. And I'll give you a few options for how you might structure this paper. There's a lot of different kind of inputs that you'll be synthesizing. It may feel complicated at first when you're trying to draft. That's okay. But I'll give you some forms that you might use to help give it a shape that will give you kind of a toehold in shaping all of this content and bringing it together. Again, you may use writing that you generated in the last assignment. I recommend, if at all possible, trying to develop a research question out of the writing that you did in the first half of the semester. That's not required. And I'd say about a third of my students choose not to use the same topic area in the second half that they do in the first. That's just my experience from years past. But I do think it can be a benefit to staying with the same topic area, since you've already done so much thinking, writing, and researching in that area already. You can draw from that. And the course is actually designed so that you can be working in that same topic area over an extended period of time throughout the whole semester. I wouldn't worry about this too much right now, the situating your inquiry by explaining how it both relies on and advances the field. That's something we can talk about towards the end of the unit. Don't worry too much about it right now. As you're doing research by finding LEDs, finding LEDs in the literature, you're preparing to situate your work. That's probably all you need to know right at this moment. And finally, you're going to append your interview transcripts or attach your interview transcripts to the end of your final piece. So I know that was a lot of information. Again, we're going to break it apart, take it step by step. So all I think you need to be worrying about right now, the piece of this assignment that's most important right now, are thinking about developing your research question and beginning to arrange for interviews and beginning to collect lived experience descriptions in the literature. If you're focused on those three things for the next week and a half to 2 weeks, you're in good shape. Once we have that material collected, then we can start working with it and analyzing it and doing all the other things in the assignment sheet. I try to explain each of the red words, the important vocabulary in the assignment in greater detail these next few pages. I talk about the purpose of this assignment, why I'm giving it to you, what I think it will do, how I think it will help you learn. I've given you a roadmap for where we're going, a schedule, more or less, a sketch of how we're going to be progressing through the rest of the semester. I give you a few words on how you'll know whether you are doing this well or not. And then finally, I give you the one level rubric that we'll use to evaluate your work at the end of the semester. So I think that's everything I want to say about the assignment sheet for now. I'm encourage you to read through the entirety of the assignment sheet before next Tuesday, March 24th, and to contact me with any questions you might have during open office hours or by email. Um, yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave it on this for now. But I look forward to hearing your questions as they arise and to continue working with you in the coming weeks on this new assignment. Oh, one more thing. Sorry. Um, the I just want to point out kind of the place of this assignment in the larger course. So I don't care so much whether you become a good phenomenologist. Instead, what I care about is that you learn how to walk into an unfamiliar academic scenario and use rhetorical question asking and rhetorical thinking to work through an unfamiliar problem. So I'm betting that all of you have not written phenomenological inquiries before. I bet this is a new genre, a new way of working with writing. You'll be asked to use new forms, implement new methodologies. It's supposed to feel unfamiliar. That's by design. And our long-term learning goal is not to write a really good phenomenological inquiry. Instead, it's to learn a new genre, to learn a new methodology, to think rhetorically or to think like a writer through all of the writing and research problems that come up in this new unfamiliar circumstance. We're aiming to become more flexible writers, more confident writers, and to train our rhetorical awareness or our writerly awareness. That's our deep learning. Um, so when we do things like look at example genres, that's what we are getting at, trying to pull apart how this thing works, how it operates, what's going on under the hood. That's the long-term learning and the long-term goals of the class. Okay, so that's truly the final note. And with that, I'm going to sign off. See you soon.